Well, let me tell you what happened in my brain at that particular moment in time was that I was thinking of the book of Genesis, and where God says that he made everything according to its kind, and that it was, and we stayed within those groups, and we didn't evolve. So I find it difficult, and because I suppose my present position dictates to a certain extent, what I believe, and I've got to ask questions in such a way as to help me to see the other side. That's all. And
yes.
I'm putting it quite simply.
Let me get this right, because what you're saying is that the book of Genesis, it takes precedence over science. You're saying that a book that was written when, about 800 BC, written by whom? By some scribe during the Babylonian captivity. Why would you believe?
It goes back further than that, and certainly most Bible scholars have attributed the book of Genesis to Moses.
Oh, really?
Yes,
to Moses?
Yes. But
Bible scholars attribute it to Moses. I know
so.
You attribute it to Moses,
Yes.
but
yes.
Can you name a Bible scholar who attributes it to Moses?
I can't at this moment in time,
okay.
just off the top of my head, but
Okay.
that doesn't stop me believing in God. And maybe within this interview, I'd like to ask you to listen to some of the experience I've had, which would certainly probably come under this title here, God Delusion, as far as you're concerned. But because the thing, I didn't have to intellectualize my belief and faith in God. To start with, I had many, many questions as I started to read the Bible. And sadly, for some to hear this, it was the very first book I ever read because I'm dyslexic. But I made an attempt to read it from beginning to end, and it did take me the first time 2.25 years. But as I started to read through it entirely, by the way, have you ever read right the way through the Bible?
I have not, no.
Okay.
Have you read the Quran all the way through?
No, but about a quarter of the way through at the moment.
Right. So why would you read the Bible rather than the Quran?
It's just the way that I started to be introduced to the Bible.
Yes, but if you had read the Quran, maybe you'd be a Muslim.
Possibly. But
so doesn't that shake your confidence a bit?
Not at all, because of what I'm going to try and explain to you.
All right.
What happened to me is there were some what I would call supernatural experiences, and this is where I would say that for me God is real, and therefore it comes back to the point of my believing in Genesis and other parts of the Bible. Some are difficult to understand, I admit that, but when something like has happened to me, and if I explain this to you, maybe the most powerful experience, and I wasn't alone at the time, and I have several experiences, more in my latter years, since in my 40s, and I'm now 65 nearly, is that I was doing some voluntary work on a ship called Mercy Ships, and I was in the borders of Haiti and Dominican Republic. And what happened was we were dealing with very, very poor people, lots of needs, medical needs, because it had 3 operating rooms on the ship, and they were operated, the ship's run by Christians who were volunteers. I was there doing a course with them, and it was very, very hard for me as an Englishman to watch what happens in a lot of evangelical circles and churches, is that this power of what was described as the Holy Spirit coming into you, the Spirit of God coming into you. And one morning when I was on the ship, my wife was with me, and there was 30 other people in the class. And I saw people being prayed for if they wanted to receive the Holy Spirit. And Richard, I can honestly say to you, I was not in the mood that day. I was far from being put into the right mood to accept something like this. And I was watching people go forward, being prayed for. And to me, it looked a bit fake. I'll be honest, okay? And yet I'm supposed to believe some of this stuff. The gentleman that was Bernie Ogilvie, he was an Australian, very hard-hitting, down-to-earth sort of Aussie. And I went up and I said to my God, privately in my mind, if there is something there, Lord, I will have it, but I don't want it if it's not real. I stood before this man, and fortunately, He never touched me because I'm not into that. I don't know whether you've seen people lay hands on you and they fall over. I wasn't into that. And so as Bernie started to pray for me, this incredible, I can describe it as an electrical force, went into the small of my back, and it went through my torso, and it was like thousands of volts. My body started to burn inside, and it felt like burning. And my joints and everything were like it was in my death throes, like I'd been hit by a bus or something, and all of my joints and everything were quivering. I'm struggling, trying not to let this affect me. And Bernie says to me, you can't withstand the power of God. And this is what I said. I said, I can because I'm an Englishman. I'm not into this sort of stuff. And eventually I did succumb. I was on the floor. And this powerful energy that went into me, it took me many hours to be able to get back to my cabin. And I just couldn't understand it. Now, I know the scriptures, you know, where it says he will baptize you with fire as well as with water and all of that. And the next day, Richard, I'm praying with somebody who was in the classroom with me. There was a need for prayer, and we held hands. And this electrical power came back out from my torso in reverse and went down my hands and into this person. Now, I didn't say anything. I thought, oh my goodness, what is happening? And this person went like that. And she said, what was that? And I said, what was what? You know, I wasn't going to have any nonsense, okay? And she said, I felt some electrical power come out of you. And I said, what on earth is going on? This person who was sitting next to me in the classroom the day before, amongst these other 30 people, and my wife, said, I saw exactly what happened. And I said, how could you see? I was really not wanting to, I was trying to play devil's advocate in this sense. I said, how could you see, nobody else see? See what? She said, and she described this beam that came out through the ceiling, went straight into my back, and did exactly that.
Yes, well, look, you said you weren't impressed with my account of the eye. I'm afraid I'm not very impressed with anecdotes.
Let me finish. I went out into one of the villages surrounding Barahona. The previous day we'd buried a child that was starved to death. We couldn't help that particular child. Mercy Ships helps lots of people successfully, usually. This was an occasion we couldn't help. And we went to support the family. When we were up in the hills, there was just myself and another person at that time, and we heard this incredible noise, like animal noise, like somebody crying, screaming, whatever. And because I don't speak Spanish, they grabbed hold of me, a few people, and they pulled me and this other guy to witness. There was a slab of concrete about the size of this, because they live in very poor conditions. It was just like cardboard walls, but some had a concrete slab for their foundation. And this elderly lady was on the floor, perspiring. She soaked the concrete so much, so she was crying unbelievably. And then somebody pulled us from there and took us into this hut, makeshift hut. And there was a young girl lying there. And she was covered from head to foot in like boils from what I could see. Terrible sores. And she was laid still.